his playoff career average prior to this series. So with that being said, Stephen A., tell me this. Who's more pivotal to avoiding the sweep? Do you think it's Tatum or Brown?
Well, for me, it's Jaylen Brown because I know that Jason Tatum is the number one option, and believe me, I know that he's required to do something. It's not a 51-point explosion the way he did in Game 7 against Philadelphia, but he's got to do something. But the reason I say Jaylen Brown, JJ, is because last year, legitimate arguments were being made that Jaylen Brown was the better player in the postseason, particularly in the finals, than Jason Tatum obviously was. And coming into this season, a lot of us were talking about that and what was expected from Boston because we expected Jason Tatum to make amends for, his suspect performance in the NBA Finals. Jaylen Brown was the more consistent player, and through the first 2 rounds of the postseason, he averaged nearly 25 points per game on 54% shooting and 47% from three-point range. And then all of a sudden, the Miami Heat series shows up. He's averaging 16.7 points, 37% shooting from the field. 10% from three-point range, 2 for 20 from three-point range. I never thought I would see that. And when you have somebody that's a secondary option, okay, and really it's not like an A or a B or a 1 or a 2. It's like a 1 and a 1A with Boston. Jason Tatum averaged 30 this year. Brown was at about 26 a game. This guy gets opportunities. And when he's missing at that alarming rate, it does provoke concern. And that's why I bring him up, because I think that he could be a spark plug and a catalyst when Jason Tatum is struggling, before Jason Tatum gets it going. But when he falters, everything falls apart.
Yeah, I agree with all of that, Stephen A. Jaylen Brown has to be better. I'm going to say Tatum here, but I kind of want to lump them both in together because I believe this. You need role players in the playoffs, and you're not going to get, if you have 4 to 5 really good role players, on a given night, you're not going to get all 4 or 5 of them having elite performances. Now, you may get 2 one night, 2 another night, but what you need in the playoffs, you need your 2 best players to be at their best. And that's where we haven't seen that this series from Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. The reason I lean more towards Tatum is because whenever the Boston Celtics have sort of had their back against the wall over the last 2 postseasons, it's been Jason Tatum who has set the tone or who has bailed them out. You look at Game 6 in Milwaukee last year, 46 points on the road to keep that series alive. And then, of course, Grant Williams had an outstanding game in Game 7 in Boston, and they blew Milwaukee out. This year against Philly, Tatum's closing stretch in the fourth quarter on the road in Game 6, outscoring the Philadelphia 76ers himself in that quarter, and then coming back in Game 7 in Boston and dropping 51 points.
Right.
Brown is a fantastic player, and he's a deserving 1A, and he has struggled in this series. But to me, it comes down to Jason Tatum. If he's at his best, it gives you a chance to win a basketball game on the road in Miami tonight.
JJ, no debate here. Why is Jaylen Brown struggling so much in this series? I mean, 2 for 20 speaks for itself in terms of your shooting accuracy from 3, and we get all of that. But is there something that you're seeing that Miami is doing or that he's not doing compared to what we're accustomed to seeing him do on the basketball court? Can you answer that question for me?
I think it speaks a lot to the way the Boston Celtics are playing offensively at times, where there's not a lot of movement. The Miami Heat load to the basketball. There's a lot of tough shots. Now, the three-point shooting, that's a different story, right? That, to me, is just a little bit of variance. And, I'm seeing that maybe he has some lingering effects from his hand injury. I don't know if that's true or not. But it's hard to explain 2 for 20, Stephen. It just is. I go back. There's a play in the second quarter, and I wish we had the B-roll of this, and I apologize to the producers. Look, it's 56-35, right? Miami is on a run. Jaylen Brown's got the ball at about 29 feet on the right wing, and Jimmy Butler's playing off of him. They run a pin away for Jason Tatum. He pops to the top of the key. Jaylen Brown looks at him, and then jacks a 29-footer and misses. It's a bad shot. It's a bad shot. So some of that could be explain the 2 for 20. But I think it's more a function of the Boston Celtics at times getting stagnant offensively. I love Marcus Smart as a player. This is not a Marcus Smart dig, but they don't necessarily have a true downhill facilitator point guard who's going to put pressure on the rim and really create for others. That's just not to say Marcus Smart can't get assists as a function of when they are running good offense, which is body and ball movement.
Well, I threw the question at you because I wanted to hear your answer, A, but B, because I'm watching Boston, and I don't think their movement is the same as it compared to last year. See, I understand that Mazzulla did a good job. He's a rookie coach, only 3 years as an assistant. Darvin Ham was in 11 years as an assistant. So was, Mike Malone before he became a coach. So was Spoelstra before he became a coach in Miami, where obviously Mazzulla had the least amount of experience. So I get that. And you can't take away from the fact that despite all of that, he still had the second best record in the Eastern Conference. So we got to give credit where credit is due. But I'm comparing Boston now to the Boston I saw at this time last year. And what really rakes my nerves is watching them. It's essentially the same team on both sides, with the exception of Boston having added Malcolm Brogdon. And I'm looking at this squad and I'm saying the ball movement doesn't seem there, doesn't seem to be there. The sharing of the basketball, the selflessness, it's almost like it's my turn, your turn, more so now than it was last year. So I'm asking you, to that degree, have you seen that? Am I wrong when I say that? Have you seen that?
It's a great question, Stephen A., and I think you're wrong and you're right. So at the beginning of last season, when Boston, for a good chunk of the early season, they were a 500 team. They were not a good offensive team. Of course, their defense after January 1 was fantastic. But I said this, not publicly, but I'll say it now. They were one of my least favorite teams to watch in the NBA at the beginning of last season. Because it did feel a little bit like my turn, your turn. Let's go hunt a matchup. Let's go against the set defense and let's take a tough shot. Let's see who can make the most tough shots between the two of us. Now, Ime Udoka did a fantastic job. They figured it out. I actually thought last year during the playoffs they reverted to those habits. And I did a detailed segment. I did a detailed segment during the finals against the Boston Celtics on Jason Tatum. And it was a lot of this going against the set defense. We're going to hunt a matchup. And then all of a sudden you see Golden State just loaded into the basketball. And what happens with that? Turnovers, tough shots, right? Joe Mazzulla this year doubled down on the body and ball movement. And I asked Al Horford when he was on the podcast a couple months ago, when are you guys at your best? And he said that exact same thing. Body and ball movement. It's not when we're hunting matchups. It's not when we're going against the set defense. And to me, they've reverted back again to those habits, especially late game. The last 3-4 minutes of the game, it's like we're going to hunt a matchup, and that's what we're going to live with. They're late getting into their sets, all of that stuff. So some of that is on Joe, but I don't necessarily think this is a big difference between Joe and Ime Udoka. This is just the nature of their basketball team at times. They revert back to that habit.
I appreciate that explanation, and you're right. I guess for me, I didn't pick up on seeing it that much against the Golden State. I'm talking about I didn't see that much in the playoffs. I saw it a lot against Golden State, but I didn't see it a lot leading up to the game against Golden State because I was talking about this time of year, meaning when they went up against Miami. But I also saw a level of accountability too. I saw Ime Udoka holding players accountable. I don't see that with Mazzulla right now. It's like whatever you're doing, okay, let's call a timeout occasionally, and even when they do, they come back and they're doing the same thing as if they made no adjustments whatsoever. That's what I'm seeing when I see it right now, and I'm not necessarily blaming just him. It's on them too, but something's got to give.
You're right, by the way. Your observation is right on this. I used the word the other day. I used the word connectivity, and I was talking about the four teams. Obviously, the Lakers since then have been eliminated, but I was talking about connectivity in these playoffs. The connection between players, the connection between players and coaches. I thought 3 of the 4 teams had that in the conference finals. Boston Celtics have not had that. And to a degree, Joe Mazzulla basically admitted that after Game 3. How that manifests itself. It manifests itself in trust offensively. The Jaylen Brown shot example is an example of that. It manifests itself in defensive rotation. That to me is where they've had the biggest dip this season. When they get into scramble mode, Jimmy Butler creating a double team and kicking the basketball, they're just not as sharp in their rotations. When they go to the gaggle action, which is basically Bam getting the basketball and everybody cutting in a million different ways, right? They run it when Duncan Robinson's in the game. all this. They showed the clip earlier of Max Strus coming off the dribble handoff and hitting Bam for the dunk. Where's the low man? Where's the connectivity? Boston just doesn't have that right now, and it's on both.